Hey, welcome to Back Talk, the award-winning podcast from Successful Black Parenting Magazine, where we go beyond headlines and dig into conversations that actually shape our families, our culture, and our future. Black parents, how many of us have had the talk, not about the birds and the bees, but about staying alive? Have you had that talk with your kids? Because if you've had to talk with your child, speak up in the comments on the replay. I want to hear from you. Because today asking this questions. I'm asking the questions that almost no one else is asking, and I'm going to get the answers. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine, the most listened to podcast for parents by parents.
Hey, I'm your host, Janice Robinson Celeste. If you're watching this live, you are officially part of the conversation. This show is powered by our growing community of Black parents, educators, caregivers, and advocates. And now we've taken that community to the next level with the Black Parenting Academy, which is a private space that you can feel safe and you can connect, get answers, and access resources that you won't find anywhere else. And I'll drop that link later in the show, so stay with us. You can also follow us by clicking on this QR code, and you can follow Successful Black Parenting. So do that. And later in the show, I'll change it so that you can follow the Black Parenting Academy. And because we care about you, you can always comment and we'll answer your comments even if you're watching the replay. So put your thoughts and questions in the comment section, and I will always check them ongoing. So settle in. We want you to share this show with all of your family and friends if you believe conversations like this matter. And so let's get into it. So on this episode of Back Talk, I am speaking with Dakari Larott, who is a U.S. Senate candidate, and he's also the author of Don't Flush, a book that we're going to be talking about all throughout the show. So welcome to the show, Dakari.
Thank you, Janice. It's so nice to be here.
Now, I know you're running for Senate and I know you're an author. I know your story, but the audience doesn't know your story. So I want you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so in short, born and raised Alabamian, military, Army brat, grew up all over the place and built my career in New York City because I couldn't find a job when I graduated from University of Alabama. And up in New York, I threw myself into public service and volunteered and worked with the Bronx Community Pride Center, advocating for LGBT and unhoused youth in the South Bronx. I then went on to work for the Harm Reduction Coalition, fighting the opioid crisis from coast to coast. And then back in Alabama, joined the board of the University of Alabama Alumni Association, advocating for equal access and cost-effective access to education. And just last year, while driving through the state of Michigan, I was falsely arrested by the Michigan State Police. And that became the subject of my new book, Don't Flush.
Wow, we're going to get into that story. You and I have something in common. I used to run as the president and CEO of a nonprofit in California, a group called Fentanyl Solution, which was advocating for keeping fentanyl away from children. And we taught in schools and different corporations about using Narcan, et cetera. So I did that for a good 2 years before I headed out here. But it's definitely a worthy cause. And fentanyl is, and opioids in general, but especially fentanyl can be out of control in areas where it's instant death for people. So Glad to hear you were doing that. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you? Because that's always our icebreaker for all of our guests. What's one thing that most people don't know about Dakari?
Most people don't know and are surprised that I was a ballet dancer and attended an art school called the Alabama School of Fine Arts here in Birmingham, where I majored in ballet.
Fantastic. Can I find that on YouTube? Can I find any performances? Because I'm going to look.
Gosh, that was like 25 years ago, but wow. I did do a special with Alabama Public Television that's still out there, so maybe.
Okay, I'm gonna go snooping down that rabbit hole and see if I can find your doing ballet, because that got to be awesome, and that means you're very graceful, which is awesome. I'm the opposite of graceful. I'm clumsy. Okay, so I respect that. Okay, so let's go into your book, Don't Flush. right? And that's such a
Yes.
powerful title. What inspired
Right.
it? And what message were you hoping that readers, especially parents, would take away from that?
Yeah, the title was meant to be incendiary, and it highlights one of the most gruesome, horrific moments of the night of my false arrest. So, in short, the troopers were attempting to implicate me in a drug-related crime,
Mhm.
and throughout the night, they were, for example, inferring that I was driving under the influence of drugs, under the influence of alcohol, and at one point, they even accused me of smuggling drugs into the jailhouse by way of ingestion. And I was forced to use the restroom publicly in front of the booking officers, the troopers, everyone. And I was ordered by Trooper George Kanya, Michigan State Police, don't flush.
Mm-mm-mm. That's
Yeah.
terrible. I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's embarrassing. All the things. What made them stop you in the first place?
Well, the assertion of the troopers, and we've seen this in all of the back and forth legal documents, was that I was violating traffic laws and that I was running red lights, which I was not, and my friend passenger attested to as well. But what we found after 5.5 months of fighting for the FOIA and all the documentation was that the animus was from the very beginning about race. They were making fun of my African name, which is Dakari. And the interesting thing is that it was a black officer and a white officer. The black officer mispronounced my name with this very exaggerated and humiliating accent. And then the white trooper said, Daiquiri, Daiquiri, we hope you're not drinking daiquiris. This was before we had any face-to-face interaction. So throughout the night, it was gaslighting, it was racial profiling. They were in disbelief that I could afford or drive a Cadillac. And in fact, pulled my friend to the side when we were separated and said, "Is this really his car? Where did he get it from?" So
Okay.
that was the point of the stop. It was racial profiling.
And you know what? I feel like that is uh, probably the reason that a lot of black men get pulled on the side, like jealousy. How do you
Yes.
afford this car? Because you
Yeah.
hear them ask that very question: How can you afford this car? This isn't your car. And it's
Yeah.
like the jealousy that you can feel that you just feel the energy right behind that statement, right?
Yeah.
So I think I don't know what to think about that. Like the police officer, you should be making enough money. You could afford a nice car. You know what I mean? I know, my ex-husband was a police officer and it's the reason he's my ex, but he made enough money. He could afford a nice car. He worked
Yeah.
overtime constantly,
Yeah.
constantly. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's get back to your book. So you write about the talk with black
Yeah.
parents that they must have with their children about safety and survival. How did your own experience shape how you think we should approach those conversations today? Because you went through something that most people don't go through, and we are trying to have this talk with our kids as if we experienced it, but we have not.
Yeah. That's a great point. So I was 42 years old when this happened. I want to be clear, I've never had a negative interaction with the police. I have cousins in Birmingham Police Department, FBI, Homeland Security. So I always had a really positive impression of law enforcement. I thought that they were here to keep us safe. So knowing that, I also knew about some other bad experiences. For example, I really juxtaposed the story of my grandparents' 1957 interaction with the KKK with my own stop, extrajudicial, obviously, and just completely inhumane. Uh, and the talk has been happening in my family for 60 years, right? So it has to start early. It has to start before they start driving so that they really understand what's going to likely happen to them at some point in their life. And even at 42, if you ever look at the video that went viral, I was stunned. I was speechless at many points in the night. And if you can make it up, they're using that now against me and saying that that somehow inferred that I was doing something wrong.
Oh, wow. They use everything, don't they? Anything they can try to turn into something else and spin. Because I've seen that happen. I'm like, what? And I'm sorry this all happened to you. I really do. It's, um, you know, far as police, they always say, there's a couple of bad apples in the bunch, but we have the good apples not telling on the bad apples. So don't that make you bad apples too, far as I'm concerned, if you're
Right.
not pulling them out of the basket?
Exactly. And in my case, we have body and dash cam video. It went viral. Experts have weighed in on it from coast to coast. Why is the state still defending them? If you're not empathetic to Black men and my specific situation, think about it like this. Your tax dollars in Michigan are paying to defend these guys. It's been about 18 months now. In this case, will probably go on for another year and a half. What a waste of state funds. Fire these guys. Get rid of the bad apples. But
Okay.
to your point about the talk, a year after the incident, I spoke to my friend who was sitting in the passenger side, and he told me that he was so terrified of what was happening. We got separated. I was taken out of the car, and he sat in the car. He said he almost ran from the car, and it just gives me chills every time I think about that. Like
Wow.
that would have been the end of both of us. They would have said that we escalated, we brandished a gun, something would have been made up to
Yeah.
escalate the situation even
Crazy.
further, even though we did nothing that night.
Yeah, any excuse they could have used to probably shoot him in the back probably would have happened. And
Yeah,
that's the thing. People are like, why did they run? Well, you're scared. You're scared, right?
yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I got stopped, or not stopped, but a cop pulled behind me during the height of all of the shootings of Black men and women, and I am driving on this road in the country, in the South, all by myself, chilling on my cruise control. And all of a sudden, this cop comes and makes a U. Well, he didn't come. He was sitting over there, and he makes a U-turn to follow me so close. And I have a Jeep Wrangler, so I always say, I can't see your lights, you're on my bumper. If I can't see your headlights, you're on my bumper. And he was doing this, I guess, to make me do this. But I was in cruise control, so I'm sitting
Mhm,
there, starting the tears are coming down because I know
mhm,
he's up to no good. That
mhm,
energy is obvious. Like he's up to no good. And I don't know what he's going to do because his lights aren't on. If his lights aren't on, he's not recording anything, is what I understand, right?
Oh, I
So
didn't know that.
I'm sitting there and I'm terrified. And then there was a few minutes of terror. And then he decided, I can't even tell you how long it was. Felt like forever. But then he decided to turn around really quickly. I guess he didn't get a reaction out of me. He didn't know he really did if he would have saw me,
Mm,
face to face. But
mhm,
he turned around and he kept going. He probably ran my license, saw that it was clear, and then because I didn't react, I'm sure that's he turned around and left. But
wow.
I had that flight feeling too, where I just
Right,
wanted to get away. So I
right.
understand your friend, and I understand people who run because
Mhm,
you're terrified
yeah,
and you hope you can get away and not get shot in the back. You know what I mean? But it's a terrible place to be, and I don't think that is fair that anyone should feel that way. I remember growing up and feeling like cops are being told, "Oh, the police are your community helpers." So what?
mhm,
How do we tell kids now that we got to have
mhm,
this talk, but yet
yes.
we don't want to scare them, right? So how do we not scare them?
It's a balancing act. I think it's having those positive influences in the community. I live in Birmingham, Alabama. We're a majority Black city. I know the sheriff, I know the police chief. I don't fear the police here. So I think that's important for the kids to see,
Hmm.
to engage in those community based activities where they can meet law enforcement and talk to them. And then be realistic about, like we said, there are those bad apples, just like there are bad adults in every scenario, right? And they have to be prepared. And I distinctly remember buying my first car and my dad showing me where to put my paperwork, how to put the wallet on the dashboard, like those things that we learn now. Sometimes you don't remember them in the moment because you're just so terrified, though.
Wow. I mean, I've not had to have the talk with. I have grandkids, so I haven't had to have the talk with any of them yet. I had one grandkid that experienced the police coming to the house for basically a wellness check because his dad dropped him off too early and he let
Mm,
himself in, and mom wasn't home yet, so mom freaked
mm.
out and called the police to go check on him. And he's autistic. He had a great day. I just got to share the story. I'm a proud grandma anyway, but he had a great week and we get smiley faces every day. That's his goal, right? So when the police came and knocked at the door and he opened the door, he's 6. He opens the door and he sees the police and he tells them, I cannot go to jail. I have a smiley face. He told him I cannot go. I have a smile. But he has this bit of a fear that
Yeah.
police are going to arrest him. And I'm not
Oh
sure
no.
exactly where that came from. So we have to still figure out how to balance that. And but the
Yes.
funny thing is that we don't have that fear with the fire department, right? We only have it
No,
with the
no.
police departments.
It's a cultural thing. And speaking to my issue, the judge actually said, well, there was a black officer there, so how could it be racism? This is institutional. This is institutional. Well, he also said that I was suspicious for driving at 3 a.m. So you see what I'm working with.
Slave patrols. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's what it sounds
yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. But it's cultural. It is
Yeah.
so cultural and so much more complex than racism.
So we cannot drive after a certain time. Is it
Yes,
suspicious?
yes. Or, a rather expensive car.
Yeah. So can't drive after a certain time. Can't drive a certain car.
Yeah,
We have because of our skin color, which is
yeah.
wonderful melanin that does
Yes.
amazing things that they wish they sometime had. Right. And yet, but so freedom to them is a facade. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
Right.
don't be nervous. Don't be
Oh
nervous
God.
based upon all of the history that we've
God
had with
forbid.
negative interactions with the police. So,
Our
yeah.
poor kids, especially when they get to driving age, right? Because that's usually when we have this talk. Now, keep your hands at 10 and 2, put your information on the dashboard or in
Mhm,
the window.
mhm.
And then I hear parents say, and this always just gets me right in the gut, your only goal is to get home safe. That's
Yeah,
it, because they
yeah.
know they might not. So do whatever you got to do. Yes, ma'am. No, no, sir. What so you can get home safely. Don't
Mhm.
back talk. All of that stuff. Ironically,
Right.
the name of the show. Don't back talk. Right. So
Right, yeah.
it's a shame. Why? I mean, why do we have to do this to our kids? Like, they keep saying be resilient. Why do our kids have to be so
Mhm,
resilient? Why aren't you doing stuff that so that our kids can be protected? You ready to
mhm.
write a whole story about that, by the way.
And that's
But
why I wrote the book. That's why I wrote the
yeah,
book, to bring light to the issue, and ultimately, I just realized the current systems are not set up for us, and we've got to change the laws. And I spent 20 years fighting from the outside, advocating, protesting, doing all of this work. I need to be in a position where I can write the laws and administer justice. And that's why I'm running for US Senate.
absolutely, and I'm glad you are. But how did that moment change your view of the justice system and parents who have black boys?
Well, it made it real to me. Like when you think about folks who are falsely charged and imprisoned and 15, 20 years, I really just kind of saw as I sat in the jailhouse that night how it happens. And I thought very much about like how many other people here are actually innocent, like completely innocent. And maybe they don't have the resources to bond out. In my case, they told me it would take 2 weeks to get the drug test results. So if I didn't have $100, I guess I would have sat there for 2 weeks, lost my job, my car would have been impounded. Like it just snowballs. So that was part of my calculus, that I had to use my resources to fight back all the way to the Supreme Court if it takes it. We're currently in the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So we're one level below the US Supreme Court, fighting the state police of Michigan.
Good, and I hope that everything gets ruled in your favor. But one encounter with the wrong person, or in this case, two of the wrong people, can
Yeah.
ruin a person's life,
Yes.
ruin up their life, their family, their career, everything. You don't show up at work, you lose your car, you can't feed
Yeah.
your kids, you get evicted. Some people, because they're living paycheck to paycheck, can't miss a day of work.
Yes. Right.
So when is this reform coming that I keep hearing about? Where is this reform coming from?
We've got to change the laws federally. And that was my calculus in running for a federal role. I live in Alabama. Pragmatically, I don't see us passing any type of comprehensive reform. But what I've authored is a bill called the Motorist Bill of Rights. And it protects us on the roads. And it's very simple. It's like use the infrastructure we already have. Most police systems have invested millions of dollars in body and dash cam, but then they don't share it with us. They weaponize it against us. So we had a situation here in Birmingham. High schooler Jabari Peoples was the victim of a police homicide. The state police here in Alabama, it's called Aaliyah, refused to release the video to the family. And then when they ultimately did, it was this edited thing. It was just a very small piece of the night. And it basically raised more questions than answers. So I want to change that. I want to ensure that video evidence is uploaded to a neutral third party cloud server that public defenders and victims and families can access and get clarity. And then that makes everybody safe. It holds the police accountable.
No, that's great. That's great that you did that. I think that that's a start. It's definitely a start. I also think that, and I don't know if we'll ever get their cooperation, but state membership organizations like the FOP, Federal Order of Police, they need to really lead the way on this. And I don't know if they ever will, because I've not seen them take a big stance to basically do what they're supposed to do, protect the people.
Protect and serve.
Yeah, I have not seen a stance on that, and siding with the cops, whether they're right or wrong, is wrong. It's just wrong.
Right. Right.
So I think it does. I think you have to get their buy-in as well. These national police organizations, and I'm not sure how to do that since they have since their existence just protected police officers. I have your book up there. You'll cover your book. So the lessons that you learned, it seems like you kept your composure through this whole traffic stop. How did you do that, by the way? Because I know I would have been like, "What?
It
How did you keep your
it
composure?"
was that was my survival instinct. It was say as little as possible, be respectful, no sudden movements, keep your hands visible. And I thought a lot about my grandparents and how they survived the stop with the KKK in 1957 in Birmingham. And it was that quick thinking that frankly allowed me to be here speaking to you today. That was really it. And as angry as I was, humiliated as I was, I knew I had to survive that day to the fight. To be, you have to stay alive first before you do the fight.
Right. And that's why moms and dads are telling their kids the same thing, but how do we teach our kids to stay calm? And did that moment of your grandparents' encounter with the KKK, was that actually in your head during the stop?
Oh, for
Mhm.
sure. For sure. The similarities were just so glaring. I think about the burning cross and the flashing lights of the squad car, and the abuse of power, the blockade. I mean, it it was very easy to tie the two together. And I talk about some other incidents. We're so vulnerable in our cars. There was an instance where a man hit my grandmother and two of her friends in their car, and she went to the police department and tried to get justice from that. And it was just like, you're just just a couple black girls. Who cares? We're not gonna, bring any matter against a white man. So
Mhm.
these stories have been happening for generations and generations. Um, and it's sad how some things just have not improved.
No, and thank God for the internet now, because you can be judged by the court of public opinion. So, like,
Yes.
putting these recordings out there also have helped. I got to say, I got to kudos to Netflix too for them covering some stories that helped to get justice in the past. But yeah, I don't know how do we teach children to stay calm, especially teens who are they have the teen attitude, 6,
Yeah.
7, I don't know all the stuff that they got going on. How do we teach kids? Like, what would you say to a parent who has teens to keep them calm in a situation? What do they need to do?
I really, after my experience, again, this happened to me at 42, and I wasn't fully ready. I strongly believe in having scenarios and going through this repeatedly so you know what to do. It's a shame we have to be many lawyers every time we get into the car, but I've learned through just posting the videos online, for example, I did not have to submit to those 7 sobriety tests out in the
See?
cold April 10th
Mhm.
in Michigan. That's news to me at 42 years old. So we've got to educate our kids. There's so many resources online, YouTube, whatever. This is what you say, this is what you don't say. For the most part, you can remain silent throughout the night. You can call for a supervisor, for example. You can ask for their credentials. You can do a lot of different things to slow down the process. And I'm still learning myself. And that's something that I definitely am thinking a lot about, like what's next for me, whether in office or not. I definitely want to be in this space of helping young people with very difficult situations like these that inevitably happen.
That's important. And the fact that you don't always know your rights, I think preparing ahead of time is a way to do that, and finding out your rights. I always said if I had to do college all over again as a freshman, I would have gone ahead and went to law school. The only thing kept me from doing it was laziness because I was in debate club and we had to carry back then all these books, heavy books around. So if we had iPads and internet, I would have totally been an attorney because I feel like you need that baseline to know all of your rights and what you can or cannot do. And I feel like if you're an attorney, not many people can mess with you and get away with it. So, had I had to do it all over again, I would have done that just to protect myself and my family and be able to educate people on their rights, right? Probably would have been
Yes.
civil rights attorney knowing me, right? But
Right. Right.
kids, we have to let them know what they can and cannot do. But I do feel that a lot of times in these stops that I have seen recorded, when Black people know their rights and they exercise their rights, the cops, especially white cops, get upset. And
Mhm.
I've heard the term uppity N-word, right? Uppity
Okay.
N-word.
Okay.
I'm sure you're familiar with what I'm talking about.
Hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So what do we do then? If we say, can we get a supervisor? Can I get your name? Can I get your card?
Yeah.
And they resist and then they get angry. We can't teach kids, is that something we should still teach our kids? I don't know. I don't even know if we know the answer to that question. But what would you suggest if we're exercising our rights, even as adults, and you
Yeah.
get this cop that's angry because we're challenging them a bit?
Uh, It's it is completely legal to be disrespectful. It is, but it's not
Mm-hmm.
helpful, right? It's not helpful. And I just looked at the calculus and I said, I'm in a dark alley at 3 a.m. with two cops. How do you win? You have to be compliant. Be compliant and as respectful as possible. And that's what got me through that night. And that's why I'm still here today. And now I can be aggressive. Now I can sue
Yeah,
them in appeals court. That's
good.
the time. So I think that's the important conversation with our youth. And it's all about starting early. One of the things I remember in that moment was a course I took in undergrad. So that would have been what, 20 something years earlier, right? And this was like a business law case, but the professor kind of went on a tangent and said, oh, by the way, never ever allow anyone to inspect your car. You just never know. What if someone valeted your car and something fell out of their pocket into your car? And I'll never
I never even thought
forget
about that.
that
Yeah.
discussion, right? So it's interesting when the troopers were plotting to plant drugs in my vehicle, which was caught on camera, they made a comment about he's probably going to refuse. He's going to refuse access to the car. So,
And you should.
uh, yeah, as you should. So we've got to tell the youth that you have certain rights. You have your Fourth Amendment right, illegal search and seizure, and you can, decline to do these sobriety tests.
Right. I had a friend move my things down south in an RV. Like we had just small boxes, right? So he volunteered to take all the small boxes down south from Philly to Florida. Got stopped, pulled because he didn't use his signal, and he refused to let them search because I had all my boxes in there, right? So he was like, "There's nothing illegal, right?" So what the police did in the southern state was they told him, "Okay, well then you're gonna have to wait till we get the search dog to come." Right?
Mm.
So then he waited 45 minutes for this dog to come. And so they had the dog sniffing, they had the mirrors out looking underneath the RV. And the dog didn't do anything. Like, they're supposed to sit and whatever. The dog didn't do anything. And what did they say? Every time they say, oh, the dog alerted us to something. It never fails. The dog's over there wagging his tail like, hey, I'm over here. I'm having a good time. I'm not alerting nothing. I'm not sitting. I'm not pointing. I'm just like, okay, we outside. But no, dogs do anything. And they searched the vehicle because now they
Yeah.
had, probable cause, right? The dog alerted, didn't do a dang thing.
Mm.
So the funny thing was about that, just end of the story real quick, is that I love Smarties and little those little Halloween candies that are like they're like, I don't know, they look like little pills, but they're candy. Like all the kids get it right, Smarties and things like that. And so I had the wrapper in the handle of the door handle before he left. I didn't know it was still there. I just kind of ate it and put it there. And they literally tested that candy wrapper for cocaine.
Oh
I
my
guess
God.
cocaine or whatever substance they were looking for. They had nothing. So they eventually had to let him go. but they
Mhm.
wasted a good 2 hours of him on the side of the road, which is dangerous anyway.
Wow.
But
Wow.
that's what I don't understand. That's why we need that reform. We need that
Yes.
reform. And
Yeah.
you talked about how Alabama's education system mirrors like larger systemic issues, and you weren't even out in Alabama when that happened, right? You were in Michigan, right?
So, yeah, so I was living in Alabama and I was going back and forth, but you're right. I'm one of the lucky ones. My mom is a teacher. She's been a teacher for most of my life, something like 40 years in public schools, specifically special education. But sadly, here in the state, we underfund education. And our attainment ranking is 45 out of 50, meaning folks just don't complete a full coursework of education here in the state. And then our quality of education ranking is 38 out of 50. So we're rating the Education Trust Fund to build the most expensive prison in American history, which I just heard is delayed now. So it's going to
Oh,
cost
good.
more. And you're right. An Alabamian black student is suspended every 15 minutes here in state. So they start that prison pipeline very, very early. And 50% of our prisons are black folks, even though only 26% of the state is black.
Oh man, that's so just not even. It's not. It's of course it's not fair, and we know that Black people get harsher sentences. When a lot of times they'll let the white person off with like a pat on the hand, like okay, you want to pay this fine or whatever. And I feel like, and people could debate me on this all you want. I'm gonna set up my table and say debate me, because I feel like with and it is just me speculating, but with the lapse of farm workers, I think they're going to use the privatized prisons to work on the farms, which means that system needs bodies. Automatic. If you don't have the bodies, they can't make a profit, and it feels like
Yes.
that's where they're going to start locking up more people for smaller crimes, or and giving them the harsher sentences, the maximum sentences to keep them into the system so that they can work for free, basically, because it's not a lot to get paid. And again, we're back to slavery.
Uh, yeah, it's slavery 2.0. It's a crazy statistic. Highly recommend your readers and watchers to read Black AF history. It really walks you through
That's
the
right. Let me get that.
history
Hmm.
of prison labor. At one point, it was something like 70% of Alabama's economy. It's probably still quite up there, but you're absolutely right. It's so transparent. We know the companies involved. It largely is the food industry, the industrial food industry, fast food industry, that are basically using slave labor now. And it's very scary to think what's going to happen with those farm jobs.
Yeah, it is scary. I tend to think about things too much and put two and two together. And then I'm also well read. So I'm like, the people don't see it coming. A lot of times you talk to people and they say ignorance is bliss. I would love to have that ignorance in the bliss, because a lot of people just don't pay attention. And I'm like, I pay attention too much. So when I come to them,
Mhm.
like, they're like, that's not going to happen. Yes, it is happening. Like, so, but you do have to pay attention. And you talked about how this whole system in schools, and your mom being a teacher, but schools need reform too, because they are contributing to this pipeline. Is there anything that parents can do right now to fight for fair education so that their children aren't suspended unjustly?
Mhm. Mhm. Well, one of the things my mom always did was speak to how Black boys need to learn, ensure that we advocate for more diverse panels of teachers in the school. That's one of the easiest things we can do. And again, it all comes back to funding. We've got to pay teachers competitive salaries so we can attract diverse workers into the workplace, including men. That is simple. It seems very simple, but it comes back to money. And we're seeing that in places like New York City, where they're able to improve the diversity of the schools. And it's so important to have those Black male role models in school and advocates. That was so important to me, actually, as a young person, seeing Black men teachers throughout my career.
Right. Let's talk about this school to prison pipeline a little more, because a lot of people don't know what it is. I'm gonna let you explain your version of how you see it. What is this school to prison pipeline?
Well, it's systemic. It really is the process of getting young people into our prison system and for 30, 40 years or life, because here in Alabama, it's almost impossible to get parole. And it starts at a very early age. It's every 15 minutes, a Black child is expelled. Um, Harsher punishment for being kids, frankly. Um, and frankly, it's tied to economic opportunity. So when folks just don't have opportunities in their communities, job opportunities, it can lead to very big mistakes in youth. So we've got to support these kids. We've got to give them pipelines to success, career opportunities, access to mental health. And when you take away all of that funding, what do you expect? A population that you can then imprison.
Right, right. And I know as a former teacher, I've seen everything from black kids doing the same thing as the white kids, and the white teacher hating the black kid for it, but praising the white kid for it.
Mm, mm,
Where I had to step in because I ain't gonna let that happen. First of all, so that, and I've seen where kids get suspended to expulsion to, and they feel, first of all, they don't have anything to do when they're home alone and their parents are working, so they get in trouble, and they can easily get in trouble, and then get arrested, go to juvie, and then that starts the pipeline, right? And they also feel
right.
bad about themselves because now you got this school telling them they're constantly doing things wrong and they're bad. And at that young age, that sticks in your head. Oh, I'm bad, then I'm gonna be bad, right? The self-fulfilling prophecy, that right? That's what we have in psychology. It's like a mirror, looking in a mirror. Somebody tells you what you are, then you internalize that and you become that person. So we need to stop and make sure we're not doing the same thing at home too. Don't tell your child, ever tell your child they're bad, right? Their behavior
Yeah.
might be bad at that moment that you don't like, but your child is not bad, because then they internalize that as who they are. So let's make
Mhm.
sure we're not calling kids bad. That's one thing that's very different. That sounds like a fine line, but it's very different from saying their behavior is bad versus the kid is bad, right? You don't want to
Right.
throw the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Mhm.
So, but how do we stop that at home? How do we stop the school to
Mhm.
prison pipeline at home? Like, what
Mhm.
would you suggest?
Well, I think there are a lot of community-based things we can do. I think about truancy issues within the Black community. A lot of it is just they don't have transportation to school. Um, I also think about why we need leaders that are going to fight for programs like SNAP. We have children that are literally hungry, and how do you learn that way? So a lot of the issues are macro, um, but I also think that we can get micro by looking at community-based programs that support these families. I've seen some really good initiatives here in Birmingham, in my hometown, where families can receive bonuses for excellent, perfect school attendance, um, honoring students and families that make that commitment, and then helping them to do that and showing the importance of showing up and learning.
Right. Talking about kids not being able to learn who are hungry. We just had a whole administration keep kids from eating
Yes.
for weeks at a time here, like, and we didn't even know if it was going to go on until after the holidays.
Right.
So we definitely need, I'm going to say, not only you to run for office, people who care, who are in touch with their constituents, who've lived it, to run for office. We need more people like you stepping up to the plate. I always say, if you have one of those feisty children who likes to argue with you or give you an argument about why they should do something, nurture them to be an attorney, to be a judge, not just to be attorney, but to be a judge, because we need more
Yeah.
black judges, right? So take
Yes.
that
Yeah.
feisty
So
kid
important.
and say, hey, you'd be a great attorney. Start nurturing that. That's what we need. So yeah, I love those feisty kids. But you took your personal pain into public advocacy, and you're doing it now. Um, besides running for office, how can parents use their voice to create change in their own communities?
Be visible and think about opportunities to support organizations that are driving things in the right direction. So, one of the organizations that I've reached out to is Alabama Appleseed. They are the leading organization in our state for families impacted by incarceration. And through them, I've learned so much about this issue, and that's propelled me to speak at the Alabama State House. So there are a lot of really good people out there doing work, and they need help. They need us to lift them up with our voices. So seek out those organizations.
Great, great. And we have a lot of Black dads who watch our show. Um, what do they need to hear right now about raising their children, especially Black boys? What do you have to say to them?
Talk to them and listen to them. And I just think about my own personal experience. It was multi-generational that ultimately got me through my night of April 10th, 2024. Those stories are so important. And it's hard now. It's much harder, I guess, now with cell phones and all these distractions. But those stories are the reason that I'm here today. Those stories of survival. So we've got to share that, but then have a two-way conversation where we're hearing out our kids.
Right. What gives you hope? Like, what gives you
Mm,
hope about the future, especially for Black families?
yeah. Well, I'll go back to just a couple weeks ago, November 4th, seeing people show up and show out at the polls. It tells me that there are some really good people that want to see things improve in this country. And if we can just get them out again next year, we might have a chance in improving our situation as a country, having a government that wants people to be fed and to have health care. So I think that there is some hope there.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you for saying that because we all need some hope, right? Especially
Yes.
the things we're going through in this country right now.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
your everything has been so powerful that you've said. Tell the audience how they can follow your journey, get your book, and support your campaign as well.
Thank you. So just check me out at DakariLarott.com. And we're also on social media as Dakari Larott for Senate. So we are looking for donations. We're looking for volunteers coast to coast. We'll start home banking in the beginning of the year. So this is a national movement to take back our Senate and to finally get to work for Alabamians and Americans again.
Fantastic. Dakari, I want to thank you for sharing your time, your wisdom, and your heart with us today. So thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Janice.
All right. And to everyone watching this replay, thank you for being here, for supporting Back Talk, the award winning podcast for successful Black parenting magazine. This show exists because our community shows up, engages, and elevates the conversation. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on every platform. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn. Wherever you scroll, we are there. Hit follow, like, turn on the notifications, share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, because we'll be back with more conversations that matter, more voices that inspire, and more truth that strengthens Black families everywhere. And until next time, I wish you all the success in the world and take care. Thank you for everyone for listening.
Thanks for tuning in to Back Talk by Successful Black Parenting Magazine. We'll see you soon.